We're following some breaking news here on Up with Krem as Washington State Patrol says 127 employees are leaving the department over the state's vaccine mandate. Chris Loftis from the Washington State Patrol is joining us now to talk more about how this will affect not just the state police, but everyone in the state as a whole. Good morning, Chris. Thank you so much for joining us here on Up with Krem.
Sure, glad to be here. Thank you.
Can you tell us just how many of the 127 employees were based out of Eastern Washington?
Well, the spread of our losses is pretty even across the state. There are pockets of geographical areas that may have more or less, but overall, we're seeing that spread really evenly across the state. We have 53 civilian employees that have separated, and we have 74 commissioned officers who have separated altogether.
So how does the department plan on handling the extra workload with those officers no longer going to be with the force?
Well, I don't want to be dismissive of this because it's a situation of significance, but we're also an organization of some size. We have over 2,200 employees spread out over a vast state, and we're in the response business. We're in the business of looking at emerging issues and changing environments and adapting to them. And so that's part of our organizational DNA. And we'll use that skill set to make sure that we move resources appropriately so that the public is not seeing any reduction in service as far as keeping the roads safe and meeting our law enforcement responsibilities. But this, when added to an already deficit, we're in deficit about 85 FTE and have been for some time in the trooper ranks. And so you add that to this, and we need more people. And so anybody out there who wants to be a trooper, this is the time to apply. We need good people, good character, and good heart to come and help us keep our state safe.
Now, how many officers applied and were approved for an exemption?
We had well over 400 apply, and I believe it was 470, 480 in that range, and there were about 400 that were granted. But the exemption is just one part of the process. You also had to have an accommodation to find a place where you could work and not meet the public. And unfortunately, in our line of work, it's very forward-facing, very, very public-facing. There weren't a lot of opportunities where you couldn't meet the public. And so of that 400 exemptions that were granted, and there were only about 40 or 35 or 40 accommodations that were met out. And so those folks had to make a decision. Do I get the vaccination or do I separate? Most folks decided to get the vaccination, and we are between the vaccinated and the accommodated, we're about 94, a little bit over 94% vaccinated or in compliance with the mandate. But that still meant that we lost some really good people. These people aren't leaving because of any sort of discipline issue or any sort of performance issue. They're leaving because they had true conviction that led them to say that they couldn't do this and as it's currently constituted. So they leave with our respect, with our appreciation, and our fond farewell. But we've got to move on. We've got a duty to perform, and we're going to do it.
Were you able to make any accommodations for any of the officers who filed an exemption, for troopers specifically?
There were, and I don't have the specific numbers in front of me, but again, I believe there were 35 accommodations altogether across the entire agency. But again, for troopers, that's a tough road to hoe. It's a very public-facing job, and the idea that you can be a Washington State Patrol trooper and be on the side of the road doing the duties that you're regularly assigned and not interact with the public, there's just not a there for most situations.
All right, Chris. Well, thank you so much for joining us here on Up with Krem and answering some of those questions I know a lot of people had.